And then finally, we'll have bridge preservation at Maricopa County DOT, Jimmy Camp. Jimmy is the bridge engineering manager in the structures branch of the Maricopa County Department of Transportation. And prior to joining the county, Jimmy was the state bridge engineer for the New Mexico Department of Transportation.
It's good to be here today. I'm honored to speak to each of you. I'll give you just a little bit of background on myself. I have worked for Maricopa County DOT for the last 7.5 years. Basically, Maricopa County DOT had a lot of their bridge staff retire or get very close to retirement. And so I hired on to try to get the program to keep it running and to get some new people in and to actually start a bridge preventative maintenance program. Real interested in bridge preventative maintenance many years back when I worked for New Mexico DOT in the late 90s. We had about 11% of our bridges were in poor condition. And then by the early 2000s, we were up to 18% entering the poor condition state. And we were just looking at this and it's like, we can't sustain this. We've got to do something to keep those good bridges from getting bad and going into the poor category. And so we got very active in a bridge preservation program, and we were able to change our numbers. But anyway, that's got a little bit of my background on how I got into bridge preservation. To introduce you to the county a little bit, our county DOT is quite large. We have 413 employees. We employ 41 professional engineers, 4 of which are involved with bridges and structures. Our county is very large. Arizona only has 15 counties. By land area, we're larger than quite a few states, and we're very close to the size of Vermont and Maryland. Our population is a rising population. We get a lot of people moving in. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the US. Presently, we have a population greater than 25 of the states. Our road inventory for the county itself, of course, we have state-owned inventory, then we have city-owned inventory, and what's left over is the county inventory. And so we have over 2,000 miles of paved road and about 400 miles of dirt road. One thing that we have with Maricopa County DOT or McDOT is a GIS system. It's basically it shows us where our inventory is. With so many different cities and entities, it's very difficult just to figure out what you own and what someone else owns. I've shown this is a slide of our GIS information tool. Of course, we can change the size of it in real time, and then we can see our bridges. We have several bridges that are basically, these are canals that cross the roads. In some cases, the blue lines are the roads that the county own. The white lines are probably the roads that a city or another entity owns, or like I-10 would be owned by the state. And then we have some roads that are red or green, where it means we only take responsibility for half of the road. So the city or the county takes care of one half and we take care of the other half. So it's quite a process just to keep track of what we own. Our bridge inventory that we're responsible for, we basically have 441 structures that we're responsible for. We have 76 span bridges. You know, our span bridges, the average year that they were built was 1985. We have some very large bridges. I think our longest one is close to 1,700 feet long. And then some of these are very wide. Some of them will have, let's say, 2 lanes each direction with very wide shoulders they're built that wide for future expansion. We have a lot of culvert bridges. We have 216 that have a wheel path greater than 20 feet, and then we have 149, which are the smaller culverts. And most of these are concrete box culverts and some steel. We always like to look at, from a bridge preservation standpoint, you always want to know your inventory. We're very fortunate in Maricopa County. We have a fairly mild weather environment. It's hot, but it's generally dry. Basically, if we look at our federal bridges, about 70% of those are in fair condition and 30% are in good condition, with none in a poor condition state. And then as we look at our smaller non-federal structures, which are basically a lot of times single cell or double cell, small box culverts, they tend to be almost 80% in good condition, 75, 3/4 in good condition, and 1/4 in fair condition. When we look at our inventory, it's so important to figure out what you've got and where the problems are. With our deterioration issues with the bridges, we see a lot of bridge deck cracking, minor delamination, a lot of leaky expansion joints. We have a lot of side-by-side voided slabs that over time they lose their ability to share loads with the adjacent units. Of course, erosion and scour is always a problem with when you're around bridges. Then just general concrete deterioration is always an issue. And then we have some areas of the county where we see quite a bit of silting up in the barrels, where we lose flow capacity because of the heavy silting. And we do have one historic load posted truss bridge. We'll actually see a photo of that later, but it's an old truss bridge that I believe it was built in 1928, but it's a steel through truss. Here in Maricopa County, it's a real unique environment. We have 24 cities and towns that we've always got to work with. Towns and cities are always expanding, and so the land that they claim is always expanding, and so we're always losing bridges to the cities and towns, and then we build further out. Generally, as a general rule in the county. This year was very warm. Our average summer temperature was 93. That's not the high or the low. That's the average day and night. It was very, very warm. We basically don't salt our roadways. There's no need for it. We have very few days of freezing temperatures. In December, our average low will be 35. We have some areas of the county that are a little bit cooler, but for the most part, it stays pretty warm. One of our biggest issues is just the development that goes on. We're adding about 80,000 people a year to our county population. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that goes in to handle that expansion. Many of the county bridges are built over water canals. And working with water canals, I had never worked with them much, but for those of you that have worked with railroads, they're about like working with the railroads. And they generally have prior rights. We generally have to get a permit for any type of work we have to do. A lot of times our bridge structures won't even be in our right of way. They'll be in the right of way of the canal agency. And then a lot of times we generally have only a 2-week window where there isn't water in those canals. So we've got to do our inspection work during that 2-week period. And then we also have to do any of the work that we want to do if it's under the bridge in that 2-week work window. Our county bridge engineers do all of our NBI inspections. Like I say, the challenges we have are doing the canal bridges during the dry up season. We also have Arizona DOT do some of our major inspections, such as fracture critical, some of our underwater inspections, and some of the canal bridge inspections where the access is very limited and it's very difficult to get permits. With Maricopa County, we try to keep a 5-year plan up for our bridge preventative maintenance type of work. Once we do our bridge inspection, then we identify what maintenance needs to be done. We'll generally put that request into a GIS asset management system. We've got a new system that just went into effect basically in 2020. Before that, we had other systems to put our work request into, but we had very limited success getting our own crews to do that work. A lot of times Maricopa County DOT maintenance staff, they they could decide what efforts they wanted to take on and which ones they wanted to ignore. And lots of time bridge maintenance had a very low priority. When I started with the county in 2013, we identified our bridge preservation needs. And then we basically sold management on how important it was to upkeep our bridges rather than let them fall apart and have huge expenditures. Basically in 2016, we were basically given $1 million per year for bridge preservation from the county. The one thing that hadn't been done much in the county before I arrived was chain dragging the decks to find out how much delamination was on the decks. I believe they felt that, well, with very little moisture and not any salt and things, that we wouldn't find any, or wouldn't, the chance of finding deck delamination was quite small. But we started chain dragging decks, and for the most part, we found just little pockets here and there, which then we could address them by patching. But I know we found one bridge where I would say 15 to 20% of the deck was delaminated. And so we were able to get on that and get that bridge patched and then put an overlay on it and protect it, rather than just let the deck get so bad that it would, it would require replacement. In the county, we use what are called job order contracts. Basically, we select contractors that are qualification based. They give us bids on some of the upfront items, and then any of the other items that we do during a project, we get the bids from them as before we start the work. But with bridge repair, the biggest issues we had was deck cracking. I don't know if you can see the cracks much in here, but there's a lot of map cracking here. I would say squares are from about 4-inch by 4-inch square up to maybe 12-inch by 12-inch. But one of the ways I really sold the bridge preventative maintenance program was, you can do a crack sealant for about $1 a square foot. You can put an epoxy overlay on for about $6 a square foot. To patch a pothole, I just put a number here. It's 180. Of course, with traffic control and other things, one pothole might cost you a couple $1,000s or more in some cases, but on average, we felt that they probably cost about $180 a square foot to fix them. That's equivalent to the cost of a new bridge if you could just build the whole bridge. Of course, with a pothole, your quantities are much less, but potholes are expensive, and you want to get to your bridge decks and take care of them and prevent potholes rather than have to fill in potholes. And then if you just replace a new deck, you're talking in Maricopa County, we're talking $70 a square foot. These are some completed epoxy bridge deck overlays that we did on a couple of bridges. Before, the water was just getting in through those cracks in the deck and starting to deteriorate the rebar, and then eventually we'd get delamination so protecting that surface with an epoxy overlay. We've given it a good friction course, but the main thing is we've prevented water from getting down in the deck and prevent the deck from deteriorating. Expansion joints are a huge issue with bridges. They basically keep the debris and water off the end of the girders, the diaphragms, and the pier caps. To replace an expansion joint gland, you might be talking $45, $50 a linear foot to do that. If you're going to do the whole joint, you might be $150 to $200 a foot to replace the full joint. If you have a pier cap you're going to have to work on or do some work, you're talking huge numbers. Or if you blow out some diaphragms, you're talking huge numbers. So sometimes this isn't very glamorous work. It's kind of a pain sometimes. By the time you have to get traffic control out there, and you have to do all the work you have to do just to replace that gland. And in the long run, it's this type of work's going to save you a lot of money in the future. Here's a couple of sample projects where we had the glands replaced on some bridges. Basically, we started getting money for our bridge preservation program in 2016, which is fiscal year 14. The first year we worked on some of our larger bridges. We worked on 4 bridges. The next year we worked on 13. Then the next year we spent our $1 million and the county found us another $1 million. So we did almost double the work in fiscal year 19. But we're looking like we're doing anywhere from about 10 to 12 bridges a year on average. We spend a lot of our effort on bridge deck sealing, epoxy overlays, new expansion joint seals, concrete repair. And we have quite a bit of erosion mitigation and improvements to do. We've been working on vegetation removals, debris removals, bearing replacement, just damage repair. And then we have a lot of homeless under some bridges, and we have to work on how to keep the homeless out from under our bridges and causing just problems for us. Since I've been with the county, we had one bridge where we did some widening. It was a rehabilitation project that was added to the capital program, but anyway, that's a lot more expensive than this type of work. We had a bridge here. Basically, the deck was real cracked up, and then we put an epoxy overlay on it. Just from looking at it from the traveling public, they don't see anything. they see a bridge deck before and a bridge deck after. No doubt the water can't get into this down into the cracks of the deck and cause deterioration when you use these epoxy overlays. Here we had an issue where we had a lot of vegetation, and we also had the homeless digging down and getting under our girders here. We came and had to armor this so that people couldn't make the underside of our bridge a home again. We also added some barriers in between girders on the other side to try to keep from getting hazards up in between those girders. Sometimes you get money for bridge preservation, and that's what you want to spend it on. Well, then this was our old historic Truss bridge. It got hit by an overhyped load. You can see where it bent this portal. It also bent these diagonals on the main load-bearing truss, and you can see where they're sucked in here at the portal. So we had to spend quite a bit of our money to repair this structure. So we basically replaced this portal. We tried to design these new members. We had the webs welded such that they would look pretty close to the original bridge. Painted the old steel, and we used weathering steel for the new. But anyway, this was a pretty big hit on our budget that we wanted to use to spend on preventative maintenance. In this case, whoever hit the bridge, we never did find them, so we couldn't collect them for insurance. But here's a bridge that in 2019, we had a lot of vegetation growing under here. We had it all cleared out. This bridge is very long. I believe it's 16 or 1700 foot long. The vegetation, the photographs don't give it. You couldn't even hardly walk under there and get through those bridges. We actually spent $70,000 just to clean vegetation out from under this structure. But we were real concerned about fire damage and that sort of thing. Also, we had worked on this bridge on an earlier project where we had some concrete diaphragms busted out from under the girders. And you can see in 2014, you can see where the problems were. And then in 2018, we got a photo of where we'd fix those diaphragms. But that's very expensive work. That's something you want to try to avoid. If you can keep those expansion joints from leaking, you can probably avoid this sort of thing. This was a concrete box culvert where you can see that top, we had some rebar showing, actually just a few hits of the hammer in this whole top slab out of this precast unit. Basically, we had exposed rebar everywhere. We had really hoped that we could just replace this whole unit. We get into the engineering of it, and there were some traffic issues that we felt we would have had to correct had we done a full panel replacement. So we just went in and patched this top panel up. Not exactly what we wanted to do, but anyway, it's what worked for us in the interim till we can finally do a permanent fix on this. Here we had a bridge with some elastomeric bearings that had been walking out from under the bridge, and they had actually been replaced one time, and the second set were walking out. So we came up with a different design. We used a Teflon a sliding Teflon bearing with an elastomeric pad above, and so we put those in to address the problem with these bearings. And we have erosion and scour issues. This bridge up on the left, you can see our bridge inspector standing there by the pier. The channel bed bottom used to be way up here, and over time we've had erosion and scour, and some of these bridge piers we see about 14 foot of scour on these things. There's really not much we can do here. Actually, the county's has a huge, I think we have about a $35 million project to replace this particular structure. Then we have other places where we have a lot of head cutting or erosion at the outlets. Those things can be very problematic. But anyway, it's kind of the lessons learned. Basically, if you need to really figure out where you're at with your bridge inventory, where your problems are. Basically, you really have to sell a bridge preventative maintenance program. You just basically, a little money spent early will reduce some huge future funding requirements. Bridge decks that are continually patched are expensive. I know when I was with New Mexico, we had, I would go out to a bridge deck and it might be 35–40% patched. And I would tell the district engineer that, hey, we need to replace that bridge deck. And he would say, well, I don't have money to replace the bridge deck. And it's like, you've already spent more money than a bridge deck just in patching. And if you're going to continue patching like that, give it another 3 or 4 years, you'll have spent more on continual patching than what a new bridge deck might cost. Erosion is the same way. Erosion is low cost if you correct it early, but if you wait till it washes away just hundreds of cubic yards of material, it gets very expensive. Bridge deck joint upkeep saves the underside of the bridge and huge expenses later. And basically waterproofing any civil structure will add a lot of life. And the key is to find funding. Funding can be problematic at times, but you just have to keep looking. I know ADOT has come to us and federal highways. They said we could use federal funds if we wanted to. Of course, with federal funds, there's quite a bit of work that documentation and other things that you have to do. Determine how the work's going to be performed. How are you going to do the engineering? How are you going to hire contractors? You're going to use your own maintenance staff? What are you going to do? How are you going to inspect the work? Make sure you've got good work. Then you've got permitting and clearances. From my experience, I think a 5-year look ahead has always worked well. It helps you to line up funding for the future, and then also get the work the work done in a timely manner. And then the key is just go to work. Find something you can do. There's a lot of work that can be done. Do the work that you can, and the work that's going to take longer to get permits or clearances or work through the process. Just keep working on them, and eventually you'll be able to work on those structures. And lastly, spend the money wisely. We were doing bridge epoxy overlays in New Mexico and having some success, and then we'd get some of our maintenance people, and they'd take an old bridge deck that was just totally well, it was in very, very poor condition, and they would spend their money. They'd put an epoxy overlay on a bridge deck like that. Well, that won't work. The bridge deck just continues to deteriorate. You've got to prevent these issues at the right time, and the better shape your structure's in, that's really the right time to do preventative maintenance. So anyway, that's basically all I had. We're continually finding inventory. Here we found a huge steel culvert that we didn't even know we had. We found it in 2016, and now it's in our inventory, and we try to keep track of it. So.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.